My name is Cirak, and I'm a spiritual mentor. I talk about practical spirituality. For me, the whole journey of our human existence is less about getting somewhere. Then that just becomes another goal, an outcome that we chase, and that has severe detriment to our health and happiness, to really accepting being at peace with who we are now.
Mhm. Right. Today, I'm entering the rice field on my way to meet Cirak. He's a spiritual mentor I met here in Bali. We crossed paths a few times, and every time I met him, I felt something very deep and beautiful in him. He's a very insightful man, and I know you will enjoy meeting him as well. He talks about practical spirituality, and we spoke about his recent book, The 5 Levels of Awareness. And I feel it's an important book because it helps you see where you are, the patterns you live by, and it brings light to the path we still need to take. What struck me the most in our conversation was the simple idea. You don't get there by wanting to be there. You get there by wanting to be here. And that stayed with me. So I know you will enjoy this conversation.
Good. So,
Coming across, when we met a few times, I always felt a very big light and love from you for what you do. So maybe you can share with me what's your guiding principle?
Yeah.
Or
Well, that light and love we all have within ourselves. So I'm not different or unusual, or there's nothing special about me. I was growing up and being conditioned pretty much all the same ways of making a plan and chasing an outcome, thinking that once I get to a certain place, once I have all the pieces in order, that then I'll be happy, then I'll be loving life. And just through learning and growing and making mistakes and having successes, but failures as well, that, being a student of life, so to speak, that certain wisdoms started to reveal themselves. And maybe I am an older soul that I learned those lessons a little sooner than some of my peers that I was observing. But essentially, learning to really see things as they are, I started getting interested in meditation, mindfulness, and breath work, and sound healing, and regression work, and all these things that we keep exploring. Ultimately led me to a place of kind of unlocking that consciousness, that source energy that's all around us. We tend to think of expansion as like expanding, but my experience has been that source is there, it's patiently waiting, but we're keeping it at a distance through our beliefs. Every belief ultimately is a limiting belief. We create these truth structures, this control grid that we try to negotiate our way mentally through life. And as a result of that, we're keeping the light and the love that's universally there at a distance. We're keeping it from coming to us. So personal growth and expansion isn't so much about getting bigger as a person, but rather receiving better what's already there.
and how do we what is that? You meet a lot of people here, and where do you meet them, and perhaps how do we get to that place where we can see that we can expand? Is there a moment in time where you notice that?
Yeah. Well, what I love about Bali is that people come here pre-filtered, meaning they've already experienced kind of those ups and downs that I described earlier, and they've gotten to a point where they sought themselves in their environment. They looked for their happiness in the things and the places and the people around us, and realized that even when you do achieve things, that's not where permanent happiness is found. You can find temporary happiness there, but it's not ultimately that permanent place that we're seeking. And so after, several tries and trials and tribulations of chasing our happiness, in the outside, you start to naturally turn to the inside, and that comes with maturity. And some people talk about midlife crisis, which seems to be happening earlier and earlier now. So I see a third life crisis and even a quarter life crisis happening. People just getting to the point sooner where they realize there must be a better way than just attaching yourself to the material world. And that doesn't mean the material world shouldn't be enjoyed, actually, and explored. we do find ourselves. Some doctrines say, reject the material world, but I found it to be the other way around. Is we should become infatuated with this incredible environment that we're in, the physical dimension, because by seeking ourselves in it, we realize it's not to be found in it, but through it. So it naturally then guides us back to the permanent self, which is our awareness of ourself, the awareness of all these things. And when we attach ourselves to the earlier layers, the surface layers, then we experience suffering. Then we experience this roller coaster experience of life. And that's no great place to be in. And so eventually life takes us down the road where we transcend the physical dimension, and we just learn to be at peace with who we are, where we are, knowing this is the key, that acceptance of where we are and who we are is actually what takes us forward the fastest. So some people have an issue, they take issue with using spirituality as a means to be more productive and more effective, and I see it actually as the purpose of what you call spirituality is to live a better life, make better decisions, keep a clearer head, and move forward in a way that expands you or makes you available to receive that light and love that we talked about.
But yet, a lot of times I find resistance in people. You say, there is a material world, I need to live here. That doesn't matter. The spiritual stuff is just, it's not what's happening in front of me. Is there more? Is there a light that can break into? What is the message in there?
Yeah, a word that comes to mind when you say that is imagination. So very often people, when they hear about spirituality, they think of it as woo-woo. They think of it as just, it's made up. You can't see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, smell it, like you said, with your senses. That's when I ask, have you ever stressed about your future? And have you stressed about your future? Yes, so have I. So the answer is, you've stressed about something that hasn't happened yet, that you're just imagining. You're just imagining what if and coulds and shoulds and all these things that might happen in your future. Well, that's just imagination. But then when you're using your imagination to manifest abundance and think of, your best life possible, then that's not real. That's not the type of imagination you want to accept. So it's like, pick which definition you want. If you're just accepting imagination in the context of things that make you feel stressed and ill, then that's obviously not good for you. But apply that same principle and attract, let go of limiting beliefs, attract everything that you do want to have happen, then why not go that way? So at that level of arguing with the mind, so to speak, like what can you believe in? You may as well believe in using your imagination for something worthwhile, and that helps you free yourself of all the limiting beliefs, as opposed to creating more for yourself.
I guess that brings me to why I wanted to meet you for new book. Levels of Awareness.
Yes.
And that's the book. And you told me a little bit about it, but perhaps you can tell me, Chris.
Working as a practitioner and an energy healer, and just observing a lot of people. I was in corporate for 27 years, looking at a lot of unhappy, unhealthy people who are working in what is usually considered the pinnacle, the echelon of achievement, yet they're miserable, they're unhappy, they're unwell, they're depressed. So kind of observing the psychology of this outcome-driven life. And then what improves one's condition? How do you move out of that? How do you find more balance? How do you find peace within? And how can you start applying yourself more effectively and seeing in those who make the changes in themselves, as well as myself, what the natural progression of awareness is, because that's what it all basically stems from, is greater self-awareness, having the ability to observe your thoughts, so you can choose which ones you want to engage when negative thought comes along. You have a choice. If you live from your awareness to say, well, that believing that thought doesn't behoove me, so I'm going to let that one go. Another thought comes along that feels beneficial or is uplifting, and that one, I'm going to choose to engage with that one. So that's awareness. And the greater awareness you have, the more choice you have in how you spend your time, what you give your attention to. So what we give our attention to, we become. So everything has a charge. Every thought has a negative or positive charge, and that which we give our attention to, we absorb that into our energy field, and that becomes a sum total of who we are, what our aura consists of. And just observing this progression as it goes through the different stages of life quality, essentially. I came up with these 5 levels that really stood out to me, and 5 levels of awareness. The first level is 2. So we think life is happening to us. There's a separateness in there. There's a victimhood in there. Once we move out of that, basically through suffering, we realize that life is happening because of us. So the world that we see, this is level 2, is happening because of how we see the world. It's our lens, our filters, our interpretation. So every single person, it's amazing to think about this, is experiencing their own world. And then when you exist at that plane for a while, then you really recognize, this is level 3, that life is happening for you, for us. It's always filtering, showing you where you need to work on. Everything that triggers you is pointing to unhealed areas in yourself. So life is really wanting us to grow. It doesn't want us to stay small. It doesn't want us to stay in our limiting beliefs. It's constantly annoying us to grow and become a fuller, more complete person. And then that takes us into a place of level 4, which is life is happening through us. So there's no longer resistance. We're in the flow of things. Things are happening. We're part of a greater current. And everyone experiences some of that now and then. We see it in athletes a lot who are more embodied, and they're just kind of moving effortlessly. But we experience creative flow sometimes, or just even at work, when things are just happening without effort. We lose sense of time and all that. And then when we're in that state of non-resistance for a while, and we keep working on ourselves, that's throughout all of this, we reach level 5, which is life is happening as us. There's no longer a sense of self. And so the boundaries to the universal consciousness takes over. The boundaries dissolve, and there's no longer a me. And you can hear this in some of the most enlightened people of our time. Krishnamurti, for example, would speak of not of himself or me. He would call himself the speaker, because the sense of identity just has dissolved to the point where you don't think that way anymore. So those are the 5 levels. In summary, there's a lot of detail. Of course, it's a 300-page book, so it really breaks down each area into the lessons. What lessons? Of core 5 lessons that you learn at each level of awareness, that then of course drive you forward and make you grow. It has a checklist for you to reflect on yourself, is like, okay, these are the aspects of myself, my personality, my lifestyle, my awareness that helps you to reflect on, like, what parts do you still need to work on yourself. And then it's full of next steps that you can take. I'm always about practical steps you can take to advance and grow your self-awareness.
Most of humanity is on what plane?
So it's on level 1. And so the book does talk about how to deal as a higher level consciousness person, how to deal with a world that is designed by and for mostly level 1 people. And there's nothing derogatory about that. It's not meant to be condescending. It's meant to just help you understand that when you're dealing with a person perhaps of lower self-awareness, is how do you better hold space for them? How do you better set boundaries for yourself so that you stay in your frequency? But it's about really getting along better with others, helping maximize everyone's their own light, what they're able to experience within themselves by reflecting that back to them with as little judgment as possible, and really spreading your light. And that's what you become as a beacon. As you advance through the levels of awareness, you become a guiding light for others, to not by telling them, but by just being and shining your light as who you are. The most consistent theme throughout all levels, if there's one word, one takeaway, it would be acceptance. Learn to accept. Acceptance takes you through the levels of awareness, the quickest, the fastest, the least resistance. It's the path of least resistance is to see things as they are, accept things as they are. Now, this is a little harder when you're at lower levels of awareness because you think acceptance means you're giving up, you're giving in, you're not going to get the way you want life to happen. So the mind, which lower levels of awareness are just a greater identification with mind. And then higher levels of awareness is less identification with mind. And living more, learning to live more in your body and your inner wisdom and your intuition. So that's generally the distinction as you move through the layers. And there is no such thing as unconscious and conscious. Awareness is always a question of degrees. And like I said, different degrees in different areas of life. So there's no one who's just unaware. Everyone is aware to some degree. So it's just a question of reflecting on the spokes of your awareness that are not as distinct, not as evolved, and the tools for that are generally self-reflection. Reflective writing, for example, is super powerful. So also known as journaling. The key with the journaling is not to think of it as the connection isn't between your head and what you're writing, but rather the words that you write and how they make you feel. So if you want one super powerful, simple, easy, everyone can do this, just takes a few minutes a day, method, it's to journal, just talk about your day, reflect on, what you like, what you didn't like, whatever. It doesn't even matter. But feel the connection between the words and where that shows up in your body. A lot of emotions are in our stomach, heartache in our heart, of course, lungs represent grief. Chest is anxiety and stress. We got weight and tension in our shoulders or in our back. There could be tension in your jaw or constriction in your throat from not speaking up. So just notice where what you're writing shows up in your body, and that will give you a place to focus on and observe that, hold space for that. Let that energy move through you, and then that's how you self-cleanse, really. It's how you release those blockages. And so again, whenever we feel triggered, it's not life annoying us for no reason. It's because something there needs attention, an unhealed wound. And writing, journaling is a great way to kind of like softly, gently trigger all those stuck feelings. And then gives you a focal point to work with.
Yet a lot of people, acceptance is a very big word. It's very hard to say I can accept something that I don't like.
Well, I think of it as temporary acceptance and this is a little bit of a mind hack. The mind doesn't like acceptance because, like you said, it's like, no, I'm going to accept something I don't want. It's because the mind thinks it makes statements of permanence. So it doesn't understand the impermanence of life yet. That's why life is more dramatic and more chaotic at lower levels of awareness, because you tend to isolate every moment, and this is good, this is bad. These are statements of permanence. Nothing is something. It might be in that very moment, but then the mind doesn't understand that the next moment it could be something else. And so it just kind of gloms onto something as this forever statement. So by accepting something, the mind thinks that now it's going to be like this forever, and it's not going to be like this forever. In fact, by accepting it, you're inviting change. You're inviting yourself to actually take action on this. We've heard the saying, what you resist persists. So if you resist something, you actually stay stuck. Now you're going to keep this in place forever. So it's actually inverse. But if you can just relax for a moment, I call it temporary acceptance. Just for this one quick moment, I'm going to accept everything as it is. And that is already enough. There's enough breathing room in that to invite change, to invite this natural evolution of things. Well, let's see what happens next. Another simple question that I promote as one of the 3 pillars of power positions to be in, is to be able to say, okay, this is what just happened. I may like it, I may dislike it, but let's see what happens next. By keeping that simple question in mind, you are coming at it from awareness. You're coming at it from an acknowledgement that life changes. There's everyone watching this can probably reflect on their life and notice maybe something that was at first positive. Maybe you landed a job, it looked great on paper, you thought you had it made. And then 6 months down the line, you're depressed, you're burnt out, it's a toxic environment, and you hate your life. So what happened there? Change. What we think was good turned out to be not so great. And vice versa. There could have been something that you thought was a disaster at one time, and then later on you realize it was a blessing. So we can't know if something is good or bad, right or wrong, for us or against us. It's just accepting, experiencing things as they are, and then allowing ourselves to move forward. So see what happens next. Another favorite thing I have is when you have detrimental thoughts, negative thoughts, is to be able to say, is this true? Because again, in order to ask that question, you have to be coming at it from awareness, not from identification with the thought, but from your awareness of the thought. So simply asking, is this true, is already enough to let most thoughts just dissolve, because we realize, that's not actually true. Maybe it's an older version of myself, something that I used to believe in, or something that isn't true at all, and that you just kind of, your conditioned mind absorbed from somewhere. So another thing to be able to say, walk through life with, is this true? That'll keep you on the side of awareness. So there's a natural expansion that is there for everyone. And you're experiencing that as well, and chose to put that into writings as well. But it could be a family, it could be other forms of art, music, painting. It could be creating a community around yourself. It could be leadership at work in business. It could be creating new companies, new ideas, being an entrepreneur. I mean, there's so many different ways to express the power that flows into you when you start detaching from your little me, which is what it's often called, and you start to see the bigger me, which is unity consciousness, which is you are a vessel for receiving, you're an antenna to take the formless and give shape to it in your own unique way. So your life has forged you, your personality, your experiences. You have a fingerprint that is unique to you. And now whatever is flowing through you from the formless, you give it a certain form that is your contribution back to life, to the world. So this is the path that we all take. For some, it's more elongated, and for others, it happens more quickly. But we're all on that same path. And what's significant about that path is the absence of it. The path is not having a path, not thinking like you know what's going to happen, not thinking like you can control life. So when that happens, then you know you're actually on the path.
And I guess that's why I call my book The Art of Not Knowing.
Beautiful.
And perhaps you can share with me what comes up when you think about not knowing.
Yeah. So again, when we're identified living through the mind, living in our head, not knowing is it's a scary proposition, because the mind is designed to know things. So if we exclusively live in our head, then we fear the world. We fear our future, our own life, what might happen, what could happen. All these things start to come into your awareness, because you're trying to know life, and life is unknowable. And it shouldn't be knowable. Life would be incredibly boring if we just knew everything. If you woke up and you knew exactly everything was going to happen today, if you just kind of venture down that rabbit hole for a second, you'll realize very quickly that makes no sense. Life wouldn't be life. Everything would just be, there'd be nothing to live for. There'd be no growth. There'd be no experiencing anything. So it makes no sense to want to know everything. But when we put our mind in charge of our life, then it just tries to project and project and project what it thinks it knows, what it thinks should happen. And then, of course, when it happens differently, it starts to react and resist and get upset. So most people, the early levels of awareness are stuck in this pattern of planning and then getting upset when things happen differently. I mentioned acceptance as being one of the consistent threads throughout the different levels of awareness. I would say getting comfortable with the unknown, more and more comfortable with not knowing, is also one of the threads. So the more you can just show up and trust yourself to respond to what's there, not bring in the past, not bring in projections from the future, but actually just see what's there. Then life gets simpler and simpler because what's there is very simple. It's just what I call an objective reality. And there's no judgment in that. You're not wanting it to be different based on prior expectations. All of this noise that we create with our mind is absent. So learning to show up, respond to what's there, trust yourself that you have the ability. It only takes a few tries of this actually to realize, no, you can trust yourself to respond to what's there because what's there is real. It's actually the only thing we're good at is to be real in every situation. When somebody comes along and they're real and they're human, if you want to call it that, you can see how that inspires everyone. They want, if you're real, they want you on their team. They want to be around you. They can feel your energy. You could even say that love and light you referred to earlier is realness. And now wearing the masks of who we should be and what society puts on us and all of this, these layers, of armor that we carry around with ourselves. That's what weighs us down. But the lightness of not knowing, of not needing to know. Sometimes I say that a simple way to practice this, whenever you come across something you don't know and you feel that urge to reach for your device and look it up or ask others and get all these opinions from social media, just sit with not knowing, put the device down and just feel what it's like to not know. Some of us who remember a pre-internet age remember growing up with this. We had to work hard to actually be creative, to fill our time with interesting things, with adventures, and we had to be cultivate a creativity around that. Today, that's a lot harder with we're being blasted with things to do and things we ought to be. FOMO is a real thing, fear of missing out. And so, but creating stillness in your life, that now is the primary task. Creating pockets of not knowing, actually enjoying the not knowing. I would rather not know something because it's full of magic. It's full of mystery. It's full of, let's see what happens next, as opposed to believing that you already know everything. You can even just feel it as we say that. Like, that's no fun. That there's no joy in that. That's just, it becomes stale. Everything we know, we think we know, because we can't really know anything, but that we think we know, it becomes old and it's in the past. You could say it's dead. The moment we know something, it's no longer alive. So you have a beautiful book there, your book title. That should, it's one that I would pick up if I came across it. Thank you.
That's, I always say, rather than trying to figure things out, let's enjoy the mystery.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's a really embrace that.
Yes, that's it. It would be a very simple principle to, if you can implement that in your life, is to start living along the lines of mystery, of wonder, of awe. This is what kids do, right? We see them play and they're in a state of awe and they just speak without filter, but there's no limiting beliefs there. Anything's possible. So just finding back to some of that childlike play and curiosity and awe and wonder, you see that in the most enlightened beings. They're like kids, Dalai Lama and others. They have that childlike quality to them. And that's really what, if you want to come out of the suffering of the control-oriented mind, that's the place we want to find back to.
Since we're talking about 5 levels, there was a big, I feel like maybe in the 60s, 70s, there was this, I want to be enlightened.
Yeah.
And to get to level 5. But this desire is hindrance, what I understand.
It's hindrance. You could even, what you could say wanting to get there is an aspect of the mind wanting to create an outcome so that it can achieve a certain state. So again, it's the mind creating this idea that you need to get to enlightenment. And like you say, it's a hindrance. It's actually the opposite. You don't get there by wanting to be there. You get there by wanting to be here. So once again, acceptance through the whole journey. And it doesn't mean you won't get there. It's just that by not accepting where you are and who you are now, like we said before, you just can't move forward. If you resist any aspect of yourself, you're going to stay stuck there. And if you want to become aware, more enlightened, if you want to call it that, you have to learn to accept that. Again, with greater awareness, you start to sense, oh, acceptance doesn't mean it's going to be like this forever. I'm not accepting my flaw, something I don't like about myself. And by accepting it, now I'm just going to be like this forever. You start to sense and realize more and more, no, actually acceptance is what helps me release my limiting beliefs, move through that which is holding me back. And that then naturally takes me into a certain direction. And that direction results in what you would call enlightenment. Well, we all get there.
Eventually.
Eventually, it's a question of, lifetimes. So anyone who's done regression work, that is extremely helpful to understand and see your current life in context of the bigger life. Think of your current life as a chapter in a book. And you might be wondering, why do I think the way I am? Or why am I the way I am? Why do I have certain phobias or certain leanings? Or why is it certain things call me to them? And why is all of that? Why am I the way I am? And that's because you only know yourself in this current chapter. When you start to experience past chapters, you see your life in context, your current life in the context of your full character arc, everything that's happened to now, all your experiences, what has taken shape in the past that makes you want to be the person you are today. So now suddenly you see the bigger picture, the full book. And that's really why regression therapy is so helpful. And you start to just let go of the parts of you that you think are wrong or that need to be fixed, that need that you see yourself as a problem. When you realize, no, that came as a result of trauma that I experienced, or even physical pains that we might have are due to wounds that we experienced in different places and settings in the past. So yeah, expanding your awareness into a reincarnation cycle is a key element in becoming more enlightened.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Good.
It's complete.
All right.
Sick.
We feel complete for the moment.
Oh, yes. That's